Answers to media questions. Question: the recent parliamentary elections in France have concluded. What are your thoughts on the results? Can we anticipate changes in the country's foreign policy, particularly regarding Russia? Maria Zakharova: we have already addressed media questions following the first round of voting and can only reiterate our previous statements. The extent to which the new balance of power in the National Assembly and the forthcoming government's composition align with the genuine sentiments and aspirations of French society is ultimately for the French themselves to determine. The structure of the French electoral system allows for scenarios where certain political parties may garner a majority of votes, while others secure a majority of seats in parliament. Regardless of how the electoral outcomes are interpreted, it is undeniable that a significant majority of French citizens, whether they supported the opposition from the left or right, have expressed their attitude to the current government policies, both socio-economic and foreign. The Élysée Palace will need to acknowledge this wave of popular dissatisfaction. However, we harbor no illusions regarding the potential for substantial changes in French foreign policy, which has veered away from its historical Gaullist roots and now serves the interests of Washington and Brussels. Moreover, in the Fifth Republic, matters of foreign policy and defense fall within the purview of the head of state, and his stance is clear. We anticipate that Paris will continue its confrontational approach towards our country. Regardless, we will chart our own course, irrespective of the threats and insults coming from Paris. Question: would you comment on the Eagle Partner military exercises between the US and Armenia, July 15 to 24, which, according to the Armenian Defense Ministry, are necessary to train an Armenian military unit to take part in peacekeeping missions? Maria Zakharova: these exercises will be held for the second time now. This can only cause regret, especially considering that Yerevan has practically suspended its activities at the CSTO and made public jabs against it. It does not matter what peaceful, or in this case peacekeeping, goals the Westerners declare, their main goal is obvious: to set a platform to implement their own geopolitical projects. In fact, these are more like reckless schemes. The Americans' appearance in the South Caucasus, as we have seen many times in various parts of the world, will only rekindle the conflict potential that remains in the region and create new dividing lines. Unfortunately, this is not just a trend or fortune-telling. This is an evidence-based analysis. The Westerners have been stubbornly dragging Armenia into various forms of interaction in the Trans-Caucasus region and around it, aimed against Russia and Iran above all. They are imposing NATO armed forces standards on the Republic by involving it in the maneuvers and training programs under their auspices. This will result in reformatting the entire Armenian security system and, as a result, the Westerners will gain additional leverage on the country's domestic and foreign policy. Russia has always been committed to its responsibilities as an ally, including ensuring Armenia's security, and tries to search for mutually beneficial solutions. Meanwhile, Yerevan's taking such steps has become systematic, which undermines the prospects for the functioning of well-established interaction mechanisms in this area. Question: would you comment on the statements some Swedish politicians made in the media that the latest legislatives in Georgia were inspired by the Russian law practices, are anti-democratic, and move the country further away from joining the European Union, as well as that Stockholm was ready to increase funding for pro-Western Georgian NGO? Maria Zakharova: I will not speak about double standards but about facts. In June, Canada adopted a law on countering foreign interference. The entire process of adopting this law by the two chambers of the Canadian Parliament only took 6 weeks, unprecedented speed for such an important change in the Canadian legal regime. This law creates a register of foreign agents, puts restrictions on embassy staff, and establishes the Office of the Commissioner for Control of Foreign Influence. Thus, the Justin Trudeau regime pushed an improved and toughened version of the American Law on Foreign Agents, FARA, through a parliament that agreed to everything. What did the Swedish media say? That the latest legislative initiatives in Georgia were inspired by the Russian law practice? Can the enlightened Swedish media say the same about Canada and its law on foreign agents? Why won't they write that the latest legislative initiatives in Canada were inspired by the Russian law practice? Or perhaps they can get to the root of the matter and see that it all began in the US, which took its 1938 law on foreign agents, covered in dust and mold, and started applying it feverishly and everywhere, politicizing it, especially against those it considered a threat. Swedish politicians are following in the wake of their US colleagues. Of course, we have noted statements by Swedish politicians, including former Foreign Minister Ann Linde and the incumbent Swedish Minister for International Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade Johan Forsell. It is up to the leadership of Georgia to say whether these assessments by Swedish politicians are appropriate, and whether this amounts to attempted interference in the country's domestic affairs. In turn, we are noting Stockholm's increasingly more foolish and brazen manner of trying to communicate like this in the international format. This is how they are dealing with a high-priority state of the EU's Eastern Partnership policy. It appears that Sweden's recent accession to NATO has increased the aggressive ambitions of this formerly neutral country that was respected on the international arena. Today, Swedish authorities do not shy away from speaking with their partners, who have dared make sovereign foreign policy decisions, from the position of strength using financial and administrative leverage. All those in Stockholm who are concerned about foreign agents legislation, and who consider this something outrageous, should speak in the same manner with Canada and the United States and ask them how they dared draft and apply the law on foreign agents. Why Georgia? Today, the Swedes have truly equitable NATO partners, and they can afford a similar rhetoric with regard to them. It would be possible to devote a NATO session to legislation on foreign agents and to debate this issue. Question: We've heard mounting statements coming from the West, mainly the Baltic states and Eastern European countries, and now we heard it at the NATO summit that Russia will attack NATO after it defeats Ukraine. Statements of that kind can be heard increasingly often and are used to justify the amount of funds poured into the defense industry and arms supplies to Ukraine, to name a few. What does the Foreign Ministry have to say about this rhetoric? Maria Zakharova, as a reminder, speaking before foreign journalists at SPIEF, President Vladimir Putin was clear and unambiguous on this matter, stressing that rhetoric of that kind was being planted in order to fool their own people and to maintain their imperial position unchanged. The final declaration adopted during the July 9/11 NATO summit in Washington once again mentioned the all-domain threat Russia poses to NATO, which will persist into the long term. This is not true. Russia has no plans of attacking NATO, but NATO never stops ratcheting up tensions. They are the ones escalating tensions and mentioning Russia as such in their documents in order to rationalize their existence, to replenish their budgets, to provide an ideological backup to their election campaigns, and now to tighten Washington's control over its European satellites and doomed, which has become clear following the Washington summit, support of Joe Biden's ambitions. I will briefly go over the US-led NATO members' aggressive steps which show that the aggression is coming not from Russia, but the collective West. One quick glance at the world map shows how Western countries have been expanding their military capabilities and moving closer to Russia's borders. They promised NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. Look at where we are now. At first, representatives from NATO countries denied the very fact of such promises, saying it was never put in writing, and this subject never came up in a serious context during the talks, and our country misconstrued everything that was said behind closed doors. Later, memoirs of the participants of those events, recollections and publications by the participants of the negotiating process and officials were released. They suddenly stopped denying everything and claiming that nothing of the kind had ever happened. They said verbal assurances may have been issued, but official documents in writing were not available. Some time later, they stopped talking about them altogether. Transcripts of official talks were made public. This amazing collective amnesia speaks volumes. After Spiegel published its article, it turned out that all of that has nothing to do with what took place in real life. Declassified archives show that following the talks in Washington on February 2, 1990, Foreign Minister and Vice Chancellor Hans-Dietrich Genscher and U.S. Secretary of State James Baker had the following to say: NATO would not extend its territorial coverage to the area of the GDR nor anywhere else in Eastern Europe. During the 2+2 talks with the participation of the GDR, the Forge, France, the Soviet Union, Great Britain and the United States, the Forge Foreign Ministry spokesman Jürgen Krabbe said in a statement, "We made it clear during the talks NATO will not expand beyond the Elbe. Therefore, we cannot offer membership in NATO to Poland and others." As you may be aware, this meeting took place in Bonn on March 6, 1991. Since then, the following countries were admitted to the alliance: Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary in 1999, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia in 2004, Albania and Croatia in 2009, Montenegro in 2017, and North Macedonia in 2020. Finland joined the alliance in 2023, followed by Sweden a year later. In 2003, Washington, notably in a unilateral manner, terminated the Soviet-US Missile Defense Treaty. In 2019, the United States withdrew from the INF Treaty. Russia did not do this unilaterally. The United States did. Washington's policy to destroy the Open Skies Treaty ended with the United States unilaterally withdrawing from it in 2020. Speaking of international agreements on the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, the United States refused to ratify the CTBT. These facts show the actual state of affairs regarding commitments, the peace agenda, and international stability and security. They show who is really promoting an aggressive approach and who is not. With regard to Russia, I will say it again, there is no point in coming up with aggressive plans against NATO or its members. If NATO harbors such plans, they should come clean about them. Question: The Foreign Ministry of Russia stated that the situation around the Korean Peninsula had reached a dangerous impasse, and that Russia did not want an escalation of the conflict on its far eastern border. What can be done in this situation, and where to begin? Maria Zakharova: Russia has been talking about the danger of escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula since 2018. It is fraught with a full-scale military conflict. We always split that situation into component parts, trying to avoid stereotypes, memes and clichés. We blamed the situation on the United States, which has been holding numerous exercises with its regional allies, the Republic of Korea and Japan, to deliver decapitation attacks on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea with American strategic weapons. They are strengthening their military ties in the trilateral format and moving NATO's infrastructure to the sub-region. This is not only posing a direct threat to the DPRK but also to all countries in the Asia-Pacific region. We have also pointed out the manipulation, lies and allegations the United States has used against the DPRK, first encouraging it to start talks and then going back on its word. Russia's principled approach consists in a peaceful settlement of problems on the Korean Peninsula based on the legitimate security interests of all Northeast Asian countries. As we noted more than once, the main condition for this is that the policy of blackmail, threats, sanctions and military pressure should be abandoned. In light of Washington and Seoul's plans to change the geopolitical landscape of the sub-region, Russia and the DPRK have signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty. It is designed to cool the militarist enthusiasm of those who are willing to use military means to ensure their hegemony, and to encourage them to consider taking practical steps towards military and political détente with a view to creating an architecture of indivisible security in the region. Question: The NATO summit ended in Washington on July 11. The day before, on July 10, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said that China firmly opposed NATO acting beyond its characterization as a regional defensive alliance, inserting itself into Asia-Pacific to incite confrontation and rivalry, and disrupting the prosperity and stability in this region. He also said that China urged NATO to make real contribution to world peace, stability and security. What is Russia's position and views on the NATO's Washington Declaration? Maria Zakharova: I fully agree with the first part of my Chinese colleague's statement. As for urging NATO to make real contribution to peace, cooperation, and so on, I think that he said it out of politeness, just to encourage all sides to promote friendship, peace, and cooperation. However, the truth of the matter is that NATO is unable to do that. This goal is not on the alliance's budget or doctrine. It is not part of its essence, existence, or goals. It would be useless to hope that NATO will contribute more to peace, cooperation, and development. It can be urged to do that, but it was created as an aggressive military political bloc of the command administrative system. Question: last week's SCO summit in Astana was quite fruitful, with Azerbaijan joining the SCO Plus format. Many now agree that it was a historic summit and formed the backbone of the new coalition. How can you comment on this? Maria Zakharova: the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has firmly established itself as a powerful and influential regional organization, with a projection of a global nature, considering the goals and objectives on the SCO agenda. Its potential is steadily increasing, and this is an indisputable fact. The SCO's development began with an agreement between Russia, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan to join forces to strengthen security and stability in the region, and to create favorable conditions for fruitful mutual and multilateral cooperation. Today, this platform brings together 10 member states, including Belarus, which gained its full member status on July 4 in Astana, 14 dialogue partners and 2 observers. The geographical area of the SCO spans almost the entire Eurasian continent, from South Asia to the Middle East and Europe. The secret of SCO's appeal is obvious: the member states are committed to fundamental values and ideals such as pursuing a sovereign, independent policy, finding collective solutions, and respect for everyone's right to choose their own development model. The high-level events held in the Kazakhstani capital have once again demonstrated the SCO's relevance as one of the new centers of power in today's complicated international context. The documents and decisions adopted following the Heads of State Council meeting, including the Astana Declaration, the proposals on improving SCO activities, the Initiative on World Unity for a Just Peace, Harmony and Development, and the Energy Cooperation Development Strategy until 2030, confirm the member states' intentions to promote and enrich the SCO's role in shaping the architecture of equal and indivisible security, fruitful cooperation and development in Eurasia as one of the supporting pillars of the multipolar international system. This spirit was echoed at the SCO Plus meeting on the development of multilateral dialogue for sustainable peace, which was attended by the leaders of Azerbaijan, Qatar, Mongolia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Turkmenistan, as well as the UN Secretary-General and the heads of a number of other international organizations. The SCO remains committed to its most important principles such as openness, non-targeting other states or international organizations, equality of rights, and the participants' firm determination to work together for the benefit of their nations, the same values that are enshrined in the UN Charter, but adjusted for the regional realities, goals, and objectives. We are confident that closer interaction between the member states and dialogue partners, one of which is Azerbaijan, observers, and other interested states, will facilitate the SCO's steady progress towards achieving these goals. Question: how does the Russian Foreign Ministry see Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's initiative about Moscow's mediation in normalizing relations between Ankara and Damascus? Is there any diplomatic preparation for the Turkey-Russia-Syria format? Maria Zakharova: we see the Russian-Turkish interaction on Syria as favorable, including the regular contacts between our foreign and defense ministries. We look forward to further close cooperation with our Turkish partners within the Astana format that remains the only efficient international mechanism for assisting Syrian settlement. For a long time Russia has been consistently trying to promote normalization of Turkish-Syrian relations. Under this effort, Moscow succeeded in holding in 2023 a series of meetings in the Russia-Iran-Syria-Turkey quadrilateral format, including at the level of foreign ministers and their deputies, defense ministers, and heads of special services. However, the emerging differences in the positions of Turkey and Syria, as well as other factors, both in their domestic life and in the Middle East in general, have led to a pause in the talks. We proceed from the assumption that the normalization of ties between Ankara and Damascus is extremely important for promoting a comprehensive Syrian settlement and strengthening regional security. We are strongly encouraging our partners to continue contacts. Recently, signals of readiness to that end have been received from Turkey, including at the highest level, from the President of the Republic of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We welcome this trend and expect practical steps in this direction from both parties. Given this, we do not rule out that other countries from among the participants in the Astana format that seek peace and stability in the region could additionally play an important role in the mediation efforts. Question: will Moscow comment on Armenia's decision to elevate relations with the United States to a strategic partnership? Armenian leader Nikol Pashinyan made a respectful request to President Biden in his message of greetings on the U.S. Independence Day on July 4. The U.S. relations with Ukraine have a similar status. Maria Zakharova: it's all fine as long as U.S. President Joe Biden actually understands what they tried to convey to him by that address. Judging by his reaction during the NATO summit in Washington, that remains questionable. I have already touched upon Washington and NATO's attempts to interfere in the South Caucasus. Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galuzin also commented on this in his interview. There's something else I'd like to point out though. Russia has never made its friends or partners choose between being with us and against us. This is contrary to our philosophy. Unlike this, the Western countries show unrestrained impudence and complete disregard for the interests and concerns of their strategic dialogue partners, present or future. Ukraine is a typical example of that, and there are more. Do the Armenian people realize that such partnerships do not entail any actual security, protection, aid, or assistance, or at least not in the amount promised? In reality, for all their grandstanding, this mechanism is designed to pave the way for extending U.S. external administration to the partner country. In other words, they will help you with decision-making, but they will also use your territory, your resources, and capabilities with no consideration for your interests, but solely to Washington's advantage. The Americans are motivated by self-interest, which is evident from their hitherto unseen active enthusiasm about looking after Armenia. The country has gone through difficult periods many times before. Why wasn't the US showing generosity, helping, or offering Armenia opportunities? US officials became frequent visitors in Armenia, and vice versa. Recently, Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development Samantha Power, who brings success wherever she goes, visited Armenia to announce more assistance. How much of it will be actually provided? The Americans made big promises in the past, to Serbia for example, but Belgrade received nothing. The current Armenian government might be lucky, but Armenia will still have to pay. Washington always makes its partners account for every cent invested. And now they realized they can make them account for every promised cent too, even though it was never provided. Who will be paying the US back for its care and attention, and how much? Good question. Question: Israel persists in bombing Syria, effectively aiding terrorists. Recently, Israeli Air Force planes targeted the port of Baniyas on Syria's coast. Given Russia's presence in Syria, how can it influence Israel's actions and prevent further attacks on the sovereign state? What steps can Russia take to assist Syria in defending itself from such assaults? Maria Zakharova: the global community is well aware of Russia's assistance to Syria. During the night of July 9, 2024, Israeli aircraft attacked a facility near Baniyas in the Syrian province of Tartus. The airstrike was justified by claims of weapons depots being located there, purportedly intended for Hezbollah. We have consistently condemned Israel's unwarranted attacks on Syrian territory, denouncing these reckless actions. Such behavior heightens the risk of escalating armed conflict in the Middle East and perilously destabilizes the region. In April of this year, tensions escalated dangerously following Israel's provocative airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, and the subsequent response from Tehran nearly pushed the region into a major war. We strongly urge Israeli leadership to cease aggressive military actions against Syria and to respect international law, as failure to do so could lead to dire consequences. We want to highlight that Israel's attacks on neighboring states under the pretext of preemptively neutralizing threats to its national security, are not condemned by all members of the international community. Key actors who could intervene to prevent such developments, including Israel's strategic partner, the United States, along with their Western allies, often remain silent and tacitly accept Israel's regular missile and bomb attacks on the territory of the neighboring country, despite the existence of ceasefire established by relevant UN Security Council resolutions. The ongoing presence of American military forces in the Trans-Euphrates region and their engagement with terrorist elements have significantly hindered the prospect of stabilizing the situation in this country for many years. Russia is actively working to prevent widespread escalation. We maintain consistent engagement with all regional stakeholders, including Israel, advocating for a shift away from confrontational approaches. Russia has concrete and well-known proposals aimed at resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and improving security in the Middle East. These proposals remain viable and open for discussion with countries in the region. Question: Has Russia granted its agreement for the appointment of Gurjan Arsenian as Armenia's ambassador to Russia? It has also been reported that Russia plans to send a new ambassador to Armenia. Do you know who this could be? Maria Zakharova, Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galuzin, has recently said that Moscow was satisfied with the operations of the incumbent ambassador, Vaur Shakharutyunian. His activities as the head of the Armenian diplomatic mission are fully in keeping with the goal of strengthening Russian-Armenian relations. Information regarding a new Armenian ambassador to Russia will be presented in accordance with the established rules. The relevant procedure is not open to the public. We will eventually announce our decision. As for Russia's ambassador to Yerevan Sergei Kopyrkin, he continues with his duties. The operations of ambassadors are assessed by the national leadership. Since you have asked about the work of the Armenian ambassador in Moscow, I can assure you that there is no question about Sergei Kopyrkin's efficiency and productivity. You can judge this from the number of events and the agenda of our foreign mission. Question: Masoud Pezeshkian, a pro-reform candidate and an advocate of normalizing relations with the West and alleviating Iran's stand on the JCPOA, won at the July 5 early presidential election in Iran. Would the election outcome influence Tehran's foreign policy? Will it change relations between Russia and Iran? Maria Zakharova, we appreciate Iran's assurance, including those we received during President Putin's telephone conversation with the President-elect of the Islamic Republic of Iran on July 8, that Iran remained committed to its policy of comprehensive development of mutually beneficial ties with Russia in the spirit of years-long traditions of friendship and good neighborliness, and was resolved to continue implementing the previously coordinated joint projects. It is a matter of principle for us. Question: What does Russia expect from relations with Iran under the new president? Maria Zakharova, Moscow welcomes the success of the election, respects the expression of will by the friendly Iranian people, and reaffirms its commitment to the further development of the entire range of multifaceted Russian-Iranian relations, which are confidently moving towards a fundamentally new level of strategic partnership. I have also mentioned just now that our leaders had a telephone conversation during which they reaffirmed the continuity of our country's policies.